Hello and welcome to the wonderful world of programming languages, in this case, C++. Let's begin with the functions on C++. You can call me John, and we're going to continue. So, let's continue. Okay, so the topics are predefined functions, and we're going to learn everything about, almost everything. So, we're using the book of Savage. Predefined functions, and they return a value. We're going to learn void functions, that return no values, and some other functions. So what are predefined functions? It's really important to understand the concept. Functions that you don't have to invent, they are just on the system, on the libraries. And what's an argument? Let's go to another great concept. It's the value that a function starts with. So absolute value, this is an implemented function by the library. Abs of x is the argument, like the square root of x the argument. The sum is a function that has the name sum, and it starts with x and y. So these are the args. And the return, of course, it's a value that a function gives after operating. So in this case, this returns an absolute value of x, and square root returns the square root of x. So we have understood this part, or not, but we are going to make an observation. In this case, it's very important what we can't do, because there are many more possibilities that we can do than the other ones that we can't do. So we didn't define any function yet. This is just a call. You can't return more than one value. Just one value can be put per function, can return. You can't, in general, declare a function inside main. In this case, this is the main function. So let's go and understand what's a call. A call, it's when you call using your phone, right? Actually, it's when you call the function as in this way. And what does it have to do with this thing? Actually, nothing. But my point is, the square root of x is a call. You're calling it. In the same intuition that you call someone. But actually, in this case, you call the function. You present the function. Abs of x and sum, there are three functions. And what's an assignment? It happens when you give the values for a function to do some operations. Sum, in this case, we are assigning this returning value of this function to this variable. And actually, it's better for this not to be the same as this, because this is a function and this is a variable. It's very good that the returning value here is the same type of this variable. Do you know why? Because you're going to have a lot of troubles if you don't do that. Trust me. Sum receives the sum, x and y. This variable receives this sum here. It's better to replace here by x. This is the value returned by the function here with these parameters or arguments. And we can do it explicitly, putting the values, the constants. This is another assignment. X receives the value returned by absolute value of -2, which is 2, of course. And x receives the square root of 4, which is 2. And very important here in this case, it's the libraries or directions that give you access to use many of these predefined functions. Actually, all of them. CMath includes very many mathematical functions and also IOStream. Let's continue. So we have to take care, because the don'ts, as I said, the don'ts are many more, are lesser than yeses. If these words exist, of course. Don't use a different type in the arguments and in general inside the function. Take care, because you can call a function, but if you don't call with the same types, everything's going to be wrong. You can have many arguments with the same type, but when you call a function, the arguments have to be passed in the same way. Don't give more or less parameters to the function that it needs. If you create the function with 2 arguments, when you call it, you have to use 2 arguments. When you declare, you're creating the function. When you call, you're using for another thing. Actually, the functions are outer of the main function. Don't forget to include the necessary libraries or directions, because actually if you don't, your program's not going to work. We have std or namespaces. Don't always use obs for absolute value. These fabs for double, labs for long, and abs for int. And of course, don't program before you know. This is a very good thing, and I hope you understand. Don't just run things as a fool. So a great hint here. Use the C++ for solving your own problems, because if not, you won't ever learn the language. So it's a good hint. Another good hint is this one here in red. I suggest you to read and to pause the video and try to solve. So if I solve, you'll never learn. If you solve, probably or maybe you will learn. So create a program that reads the price per feet square and the area of a place and give the amount of money necessary for this using 2 decimal places. So let's start, and I'm going to use code these block of notes. I would say code blocks, but I hate code blocks, and I suggest you never download it. So we will use a main function where we are going to put our predefined function. It's important for you to know that the predefined functions are not necessarily out of the function. They are used inside the functions because you don't have to declare them, just to use, including the necessary libraries. It's very good to use using the namespace std to be able to use the functions to read, right, and to print. So we're going to create a double area, a double price, and we are going to read them, area and the price. I didn't remember the order, sorry. So we're going to declare, of course, a double x to receive. So we spent an amount of money per area, so per feet square. So the area divided by price, which is the dollar, for example, per feet square, is going to be the amount of money that you're going to spend at all. So it's important to be of double because it's going to be a division of this by this, of area divided by the price. And you just have to print the x, which is the amount of money, right? So this is our program, simple, very simple. And we just put in our compiler. In this case, I'm going to use dev C++, and I don't recommend the other one, which is code blocks. I shouldn't say it to give a marketing for them, but include, and we are going to include cstd lib to include mathematical functions. We have just used cmath. It's very important to always include these two libraries to use mathematical functions. For example, absolute value, square root, power, etc. So we are going to run here. Oh, I forgot the T. And for you to be able to use this scene and see how it's, you have to put here this thing, right? And this is our main function. Everything goes inside here. So running, we have just to give, for example, an area, which is the size of a house, for example, which can be, for example, 50 or 300 feet square, or 50. And you declare first the area here, and after the price, for example, $5 per feet square, and you receive 40 as the result, right? But as it's a double, you can use decimals, right, like this. And for example, 6 and 50, and you're going to receive the amount. But we said that we need to set the precision using 2 decimal places. I didn't forget, of course. So it's the, of course, we have to see here So it's the fixed. We're going to use in this way here, fixed set precision using 2 decimal places, like it said here. So set precision, right? Let's use the way they use here. Actually, I use here. So you just have to use fixed set. Let's use the same way. Cout dot set f. So we should be able to copy this, right? So let's copy this. Let's copy this to not have any trouble, right? Not to have any trouble. So let's print here in our program. And actually, we're just gonna print the X. So it's finished, of course. So let's give, for example, this and 5.50, not 50, and it's gonna be with 2 decimal places, and it's finished, right? Everything is right fine here. And let's go back to our class, right? So in this case, we have to just go back to the original screen that I'm not getting to click, right? So let's continue. So we have done this program, and take care because Poe belongs to CMath library. CMath is called a header file, like cstdlib. And there is something interesting here. If you don't use it, your program does give you an error. Just not to scare you. Observation: if you want to use many of the predefined functions, just implement the libraries cstdlib and CMath. I said that, so let's continue. The void functions. A void function is that one that doesn't return a value, like this one, exit of 1 and exit of 0, and void of 1, 2. It's very important for you to know this, because when you put 1, exit of 1, it says that there was an error for all other case exit of 0. The exit of int x close the program immediately if called in the case when you put 1. So let's go to another exercise, because here in red, as you can read, calculate the size of a square of an area read from keyboard and the floor sail and of a given distance read from keyboard, printing on screen. And here there is another thing here that I recommend you to do. To verify, let's do these first. Verify how much is 9 divided by absolute value of minus 2. There is a very good trick here, because if you give in this way here, 9 divided by this, you're going to get 3 incredibly. You're not going to get what you might think. So when you put cout 9 divided by the absolute value of minus 2, what you're going to get is 3. Strange, really strange. In this case here. Oh, of course, 4. I'm sorry. I'm kidding. But if you put double here, if you make an static cast that we're going to learn readily, it's just going to be the way we want. But in this case, we're going to let this way. So we have just to continue the class. And I recommend you to do this exercise, but not to calculate the size of a square of an arrow read from keyboard and the floor sail and of a given distance read from keyboard, printing on screen. I'd recommend you to do it. It's really, really simple. So void functions, they're exercise, that one you can do, right? We can calculate using the program developed by you. It's very good for you to do these things. The square root of n numbers read from keyboard the power of 2 to this number here, the distance between endpoints read from keyboard, and to print the result on the screen, right? And we have some more advanced, which is to calculate the integral of log of x. You don't have to care with this, but if you want to be something like a programmer, maybe you should do that, right? Simply between the curve and coordinate axis, and to calculate the approaching number of primes smaller than x in a given interval, right? And so to do this exercise, you can check some solutions in the description of the video. We have some random number generator to use the function round for this. It's very important if you think. For a determined interval, just use rand. You also can choose the seed. This is the number that... So this function here is to generate random numbers. It's really good for you. The number that determines the pseudo-randomness, the function is srand, or unsigned int. So to implement a program that outputs 30 numbers randomly, how can we do that? So let's go back to our program. How can we just output 30 numbers randomly? Let's do that very, very carefully. So there is this function that it's implemented. We use these includings here for including everything, a mathematical functions, not to have problems. So this function run for numbers, random numbers, we're just gonna make a for int I equals 0, I smaller than 30, I plus plus, and we are going to see out the random numbers. And there is something here. We're gonna put just a space here, not to be confused, and we are going to call to run, right, the function. So here are our numbers. Of course, there is a maximum random number, but we can restrict the random number. Actually, it's not so random as I will explain to you. We can restrict to 10. So this is going to be, this operator here just takes the modulus of numbers. So actually, we're going to get the rest of the numbers. Actually, it is 0 to 10, the rests, but in the division by this number here. So actually, I recommend you to understand and to go to the video that calls about modulus in the case of division. So we're just gonna get these numbers, right, which are not random. Actually, we're gonna get at the maximum 10, and these are the aleatory number from 0 to 10. If we want from 0 to n, we just put n minus 1. For example, we want the random numbers till 40, so we use 39, which is going to be the rests. So here, very, very simple. The answers are in the description, as they really need to be. And we have also an observation, which is the cast, to convert numbers like double, like int to double. It's very, very useful, these things. Very, very useful. As in that case, we can use these kinds of things to solve, like, for example, that thing to print the division from this thing here to absolute value of -2 in this case, and we just use a static cast to just convert this number to double. So in this case, you really need to put this case, what we have forgotten. There is something here. All right, we have forgotten this. And so it's converted, and it's going to be all right. Yeah. Oh, there is this thing also. Finished, right? So this is our result, 4.5. So no more trouble. So we converted this thing all to, to double the result. So let's continue. So this is an observation. To produce a random number from x to y, x and y constants, we just use x plus parentheses, rand, and this modulus operator 5. And we have an exercise. To create a program to calculate the probability normalizing the interval 0 to 1. In this case, normalize to put the interval to 0 to 1. Given a seed. This seed here is a number that you just put in the case, let's go back here, that you just go back for example, you just go back and put the seed for you, because the seed decides if you just how can I explain that? I'm sorry for the delay. For the seed, they are not random numbers. That's the point. They are not random numbers. So the seed just tells that this is a unique sequence for this randomness, which is not random. And I would have to put the seed of 99. So the seed is given by srand 99. So this calls that the function, right? So if you just repeat this thing, if you repeat this sequence here below, it's just gonna print the same sequence. That's the point. So there is a unique sequence for this seed. This can be any number, but if you repeat here, you are gonna obtain the same sequence for this thing. Let's do it. If you put here, they are gonna be the same numbers. And actually they shouldn't be because they're random, right? So 9, and it's better to put less numbers, right? For example, not 30, but 5 here, so it's better, much better. So we're gonna get 9, 3, 2, 10, 0. 9, 3, 2, 10, 0. So this says that using the same seed that's given by this function implemented by the library with the seed, an arbitrary number, if they are equal, the computer is going to give the same result. So that's all for today. This was the class for today, and I hope you have understood and you do the exercise. So see you. Great and wonderful understanding and learning of this amazing language.